To continue with our leading story, where Brown Mogotsi says that ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula's utterances about him were in fact unwarranted and simply overreach. Mbalula recently said that the ANC had distanced itself from Mogotsi. However, Mogotsi says he is ready and available to appear before the Madlanga Commission as well as the parliamentary ad-hoc committee that sits from tomorrow. Let's now welcome political analyst Bongani Mahlangu on these as well as other developments politically in the country. Bongani, it's good afternoon to you, sir. So let's start, of course, with the president's closing remarks, where he has this time described the persistent challenges of poverty, unemployment, as well as the rising cost of living is unacceptable. Well, he is the president. Where are the solutions to these challenges going to come from, do you think?
No, greetings, AJ, colleagues in studio and viewers at home. You're quite correct. He is the president. He's expected by social contract that he should assist or provide the solutions. And when I say him, I mean him as an individual and the team that he leads, which is cabinet, and also the entire government as well, from national government up until the last voting district in a ward. So when they cannot then provide these solutions, then it says a lot. And that is why you find that in the long run, people have been losing confidence in politicians and political institutions because of their inability. In fact, not only have they been unable to provide solutions, they've been increasing the hardship of individuals. For instance, they came up with your two-pot system where a lot of people rushed to access the savings pot, minimizing their retirement funds. So we're going to still see a lot of poverty in the long run. We are still seeing also forced reduction when it comes to electricity, especially in poor areas or areas that the organization of which the president comes from would generate most of its support. And people are struggling in those spaces. I can even go back as to why these things are so, starting from the 1994 project, where the majority of our people, their lives have not significantly moved forward. They're still struggling. And those that are from the racial or demographic minorities relatively are able to do well and absorb the cyclical movements or the volatility of the economy, while others have to employ desperate poverty strategies, such as reducing the consumption of food, from maybe 2 meals a day to a single meal a day, especially in households that are headed by females. And there's no support. People are dependent on grants and EPWP salaries and so forth and so on. So you're quite correct. It is unfortunate that we have the president that we have.
Let's move on to the juicy bits of the news that are incoming this afternoon. Bongani Brown Mogotsi is saying that he believes that he is still a member of the ANC in good standing. In fact, his membership only expires in October. And I know we spoke of it a little bit over the weekend, but this was after Mbalula's remarks. So then who must we believe, Bongani? Mbalula said Mogotsi had sent him a message and he will not respond. I'm asking this because this membership renewal and review were said to also dominate the discussions that were taking place over the weekend at the NEC.
Since now we are seeing conflicting statements, I think one or both of the parties must then provide the necessary evidence. Remember, when you are a member, you appear on a database which Mbalula would have access to, but even a branch secretary of which Mogotsi should be a member of a branch, that branch secretary will also have access to the database of the membership for that branch. So if Mogotsi then says that he's still a member, he must then provide the evidence. If Mbalula says he's not a member, he must then provide the evidence. Because Mogotsi has not gone to any disciplinary procedure of the organization that he forms part. So he has not been removed through disciplinary processes. So then it assumes that if he's not a member, he could not be a member because he would have not renewed his membership, not because his membership would have been terminated or he would have been barred from renewal. So I think at this stage, it's a point where Mbalula must come with a database and show us that Mogotsi is not there. Mogotsi himself must come with evidence and show us that he is a member. If maybe for whatever reason he was not a member when Mbalula made the statement, there's nothing that bars Mogotsi from renewing his membership. So now that tit for tat can be easily concluded by just providing the evidence. As far as the WhatsApp is concerned, that again, Mbalula can show us that WhatsApp, but he need not to, but because that is, according to him, I don't know why Mogotsi would have reached out to him for whatever reason that they engage on. Because as I said, characters such as Mogotsi are many in the organization, in the ANC, So this one is just one of many. And for them to pretend that they don't even know who he is and so forth is just disingenuous, because if you listen to the testimonies that have been given and the players that Mogotsi has been engaging with, not just Usenzo Mtunu, who still enjoys his membership, by the way. He's still a member, general member. He's still a leader in the NEC. He's still an employee in parliament as an MP. In fact, he's still a minister of police. It's just that he's on suspension. So it's unfortunate that Mogotsi would be said he has been terminated, but the main man is still a member and enjoying all the luxuries, benefits, and privileges of leadership. So this can be concluded easily by just giving us the evidence.
You know, Bongani, I know we also touched on it a bit on the weekend, because Mbalula basically gave us the narrative that Brown Mogotsi, in fact, he made relation to certain members or certain people using the ANC name to pursue their personal interests. And I think in this regard, it was related to Brown. Brown says he's ready to go to Madlanga. So what do you expect then will be his counter arguments against the evidence that has been leveled against him by the three witnesses that we've seen testify at Madlanga, as well as, of course, the ad-hoc committee that will be sitting as of tomorrow?
It would be interesting as to what he would say when he gets there and the evidence he will provide when he gets there. Because if you would have followed the Khumalo testimony in particular, it was not just a submission of a verbal testimony, but it was substantiated by some forms of evidence. So for a counter from Mogotsi, it would be interesting, because he would also have to provide something that would prove that he is not what he is being painted as. So we are waiting to hear from him, because there's so many speculations going about as to who he is, what actually is he doing. Could he be maybe a member of intelligence and this and the other? So he would then need to be given that platform so he can clarify, but also be given that platform so he can cleanse his name if his name has been unduly tainted. So we are all waiting to hear from him, because he is the fixer. He is, what do they call them?
The conduit.
He is the conduit. So let's hear from the conduit before we even hear from the master himself, in this case and context, an NEC member by the likes of Senzo Mtulu.
All right. Well, Bongani, he is, of course, going to be joining us for an exclusive interview here on SA Today at 4 p.m. So hopefully some of those misconceptions will be addressed right here on the show later on this afternoon. That was political analyst Bongani Mahlangu there joining us, also just deliberating on the latest political developments. And of course, Brown Mogotsi insisting that he still remains a member of the ANC in good standing, and that his membership only expires in October.